Hey guys, OGalbina here. Today I'll be showing you guys my attempt at a hardcore Nuzlocke of Pokemon Black 2 using only blue Pokemon. I contemplated doing a monotype run, but doing a color-based run gave my team a little bit more diversity typing-wise and would make for a better overall playing and viewing experience in my opinion. There are definitely a ton of blue Pokemon that I can catch throughout this game, but most aren't accessible until pretty late and a lot share common typings. And for some, they're on the same routes, making them not eligible for us to get in this run. So this should be pretty difficult. For those who aren't familiar with the rule set of a hardcore Nuzlocke, they're as followed. One is Fainting Equals Death. 2, you can only catch the first Pokemon in each route. There is Species Clause as well. So I can't catch, 2 Azumarill, for example. 3, you have to nickname all your Pokemon to form some kind of emotional bond with them. 4, no items in battle except for held items, but I can't use potions or revives. Oh, obviously revives, but anything like that. 5, there's a level cap of the next major gym leader's ace Pokemon, so I can't overlevel over that. And then 6, we have to play on set mode, obviously, as well. Last little side note, this will actually be my first Nuzlocke or challenge run type video on my channel. I usually focus on competitive Pokemon and Draft League content, so if you have any recommendations or tips for me, whether it be how I play or editing styles and things like that, be sure to let me know in the comments below. I also have a video in the works of my most recent Radical Red run, so if you guys would want to see that, be sure to sub for more. And yeah, no more stalling. Let's go ahead and jump right into the run. Our start of this run is pretty obvious in Oshawott. We grab it and beat up our rivals so we can finally begin our journey. We don't get our first encounter until Flockacy Ranch, and for this encounter we have 2 potential possibilities. The first is Riolu, and eventually Lucario, a really strong fighting type with mixed attacking capabilities and a really diverse move pool. The only issue is that it only has a 5% encounter rate. Our other more likely option is Azurill and eventually Azumarill. Azu is still a really great Pokemon, but that's only if it has huge power. If it has Thick Fat or Sap Sipper, it's pretty passive for the most part and very difficult to use. Plus, we already have a water, and we'll be getting plenty of water types this run, so I definitely prefer Riolu. Unfortunately, we aren't that lucky, and we get Azurill, but hey, at least it's huge power. Plus, we do have the opportunity of having a Azumarill by the second gym with proper friendship grinding, so it could definitely be worse. I grind up my team and take on our rival in a very uneventful fight, and get ready to take on Charon. Charon leads off with his Pat Route as I lead off with Azumarill. He clicks Work Up as I do negligible damage with Water Gun. I decide that I'm better off charming this thing to mitigate its boost as it tackles me. Patrat goes for another Work Up as I Tail Whip to weaken it for my Oshawott. I know that I can chew another tackle, so I charm again, then switch hard into my Oshawott to tackle the Patrat for a 2-hit KO. Next up is the Ace Lillipup, which I Water Gun for some chip as it works up. The next turn I go for a Tail Whip as the pup tackles me and puts me into my Oran Berry range. From there, I hit a tackle, bringing it into the red, as it does the same to me, leaving me on a whopping 2 HP. With my heart pounding from that close call, I click tackle once more and take out the Lillipup for our first gym badge. After this gym, we get the TM for return, which is going to be absolutely clutch for some crazy early game damage. After we make our way to Verbank and grind ourselves to the level cap, we actually get Azumarill. Yeah, I feel a bit dumb about complaining about no Riolu earlier, because this Azu's damage output early game with Return and a Silk Scarf that we also get in Verbank is absolutely insane, as you'll soon see. Next, it's time to take on Roxy. We lead off with our Azumarill as she leads off with Coughing. I set up a Work Up and Oko the Coughing and Whirlipede at +1 with a Silk Scarf boosted Return en route to a ridiculously easy second gym badge. After being tortured at Pokestar Studios, we're able to make our way to Castelia City, where we can finally get 2 new encounters. We grab a Zubat in the sewers that we actually can't evolve into a Crobat because he's mostly purple, but Eevee-alike Golbat is still very bulky and annoying for opposing teams to deal with. We can also snag an Eevee inside the city itself, but won't be using it for a good while until we get a Waterstone to get Vaporeon. More plasma shenanigans occur, but we finally get to take on Berg afterwards. He leads off with Swadloon as I lead off with Golbat and cleanly Oko it with a Wing Attack. Next up is Swubble, so I pivot into Dewott and 2-hit KO it after Berg uses his Hyper Potion. Lastly is Leavanny, so I send out Golbat again to KO it with Wing Attack and coast to another easy victory. Before Lisa, we're granted one more encounter in Heracross, who is a phenomenal Pokemon, despite ours having the worst ability it can have in Swarm. We're also going to need to absolutely carry in this next gym too, because the entirety of the rest of our team is weak to Electric. Thankfully, Lisa's Emolga doesn't have a flying move yet, so it just Volt Switches out as we throw off a Return and crit Oko the Substrika. Flaffy is next. We throw off a Brick Break as it T-Waves us. It Volt Switches out the next turn as we return the incoming Emolga for big damage, while our leftovers keep us healthy. After wasting her Hyper Potion, we take yet another Volt Switch and get fully paired 2 turns in a row. The next turn, we finally break through and KO the incoming Emolga. Once Flaffy comes back in, I decide to pivot into my Dewott and risk a crit instead of my Heracross because I feel like it's more replaceable. Thankfully, I wasn't crit and I was able to take it out with a Razor Shell for the final KO. Next up, we zoom into Driftvale City to fight Clay. He leads off with Croc Rock as we send out our Dewott. A Sea Incense boosted Razor Shell from Dewott is still enough damage to take out Croc Rock at -1. Next up is Sand Slash. -1 Razor Shell isn't enough to 2-hit KO it, so I make the pivot into Azu on a rollout. After a second rollout, I miss an Aqua Tail, and this is getting kinda scary. If I miss another, I might have to pick a sack. Thankfully, I hit the next one and knock out the Sand Slash. Next up is Executor, which is absolutely terrifying as my team is very, very chipped at this point. I made the pivot into Heracross to take a slash and throw off a big Brick Break the following turn. Surprisingly, this isn't enough to take it out, allowing Drill to eat its berry and bulldoze me to lower my speed. Because of this speed drop, I'm forced out to pivot into Golbat. I get off a little bit chip with Acrobatics as I chew a Rock Slide and am forced out to pivot again. In hindsight, this was a dumb play because I actually put the Drill in its potion range, but from there, at least I could pivot into Heracross on the heel. Thankfully, I lived a subsequent Metal Claw and was able to Brick Break twice for a KO, nabbing us our 5th gym badge. On the way to the next gym, we were able to grab a Woobat and an eventual Swoobat to add to the team, as well as a blue stripe Basculin. Our next encounter would come in Chargestone Cave in Nose Pass. We pretty much get Probopass right after this too, and this will be a ridiculously valuable member to our team. Rock and Steel is a great in-game defensive typing, especially in Generation 5, where Steels resist Ghost and Dark alongside all of the typings it resists today. However, on the way I run into a trainer with a Molga, and unlike Elisa's, this one has a flying move. I obviously have to switch out my Heracross, and I decide my pivot will be Dewott as I don't want to risk a crit on Azu. Well, I'm glad I didn't, because I actually did get crit, and lose my starter and first Pokemon of this run. With a heavy heart, Azu takes it out the following turn with an Ice Punch. We're able to grab Nose Pass and evolve it afterwards so we can grab a much needed defensive piece for this team. No more Emolgas 6-0ing me on matchup. Before we take on Skyla, we head up to Route 7 and grab a Cubchoo and eventual Beartick, giving us a full team for the Flying Gym. Skyla leads off with her Swoobat as we lead off with our newly acquired Beartick. One Ice Punch later and we take out the Swoobat. Next up is Skarmy, so I pivot right out into Chad the Probopass. We discharge a few times for an easy KO on Skarmy. Last up is Swanna, whose typing is very difficult for us to deal with. I go Ozzy on a Bubble Beam and take negligible damage. It then Feather Dances me, making my return do just about nothing. The next turn I get flinched by Air Slash. I throw off a return the following turn after taking another Air Slash and popping the Swanna's Citrus Berry. I then pivot into Swoobat as Swanna looks like it has a roll to 2-hit KO with Air Slash, so then I have to pivot out again into my Golbat. I throw off a Fly for some chip after taking a few hits. It then looks to be in range of Acro, but I just missed out on the KO, bringing it into the road. I'm forced to switch out into my Beartick as the Swanna gets healed up with a Hyper Potion. It hits me with a Feather Dance, but luckily we crit through the drops and finally knock out the Swanna with a little bit of luck for our 6th badge. Once we get to Undella Town, we have 3 more encounters, being a male Frillish, a Spheal, and a Tangela, all bulky beasts that can really help us round out our team. Oh, and we get a Golduck, but he sucks. I also decide I won't be using Cobalion as its typing and stats might make this run a little bit too easy. After battling through the coolest gym in Pokemon, don't at me, we're able to take on Drayden. He leads off with Dredagon and we just barely miss out on a KO with Ice Gem boosted Ice Punch from Azumarill. After that, we click Ice Punch a few more times on a wasted Hyper Potion and take it out. Next up is Flycon, which we also OHKO after taking an Earth Power. Lastly is Haxorus, and due to how low we are, I switch out into Probopass just to get Dragon-tailed out. Thankfully, the mon we get sent into is Beartick, and we're able to OHKO the Dragon Dancing Haxorus with an Ice Gem boosted Icicle Crash. Boom! 7 gyms down. We do some more Plasma shenanigans, but it's mostly uneventful battle-wise, so we can push on to Marlin in his Water Gym. He leads off with Caracosta as we lead Jellicent and hit it with a big Giga Drain, bringing it down to Sturdy. After throwing off a Crunch, Marlin tries to heal up his Caracosta, but we keep Giga Draining, bringing it right back down. One more and we're able to take it back out, getting extremely healthy. Out comes his own Jellicent, so I go into Tangrowth to take 2 Ominous Winds and Giga Drain back up. Unfortunately, this doesn't put me on range of Jellicent, so I have to switch back out into Beartick and essentially sack it off to get a free switch back into my Jellicent. After we chew 2 Ominous Winds, we're able to 2-hit KO the Jellicent with our Shadow Balls. Last up is Wailord, so I pivot into Azu. A normal gym boosted return into a regular one is able to take out the Wailord and gives us our 8th gym badge. I did forget to record a small portion of this run. Don't worry, no eventful battles happened during this time, but during this time I actually did lose my Swoobat to a trainer in Seaside Cave. She had a Heracross and I didn't want to risk an Air Slash miss, and I thought a Twisted Spoon Psychic would KO it. Unfortunately, I was wrong, and a likely Swarm boosted Megahorn nuked us. I figured I'd mention it here if you were wondering why Swoobat was absent from the rest of the run. Now, I haven't covered much of the Team Plasma battles up to this point, but we'll be covering a few because man, oh man, were they tough. Colress was one of my worst matchups in the game. He had lots of Steel and Electric type Pokemon, and I have 0 Ground types available to me right now. He leads off with a Magnetin as I lead off with Probopass. He Volts turn 1 as I throw off a big Earth Power into Metang, coming in. 2-hit KOing it after taking 1 Meteor Mash. Next in comes the Air Balloon Kling Klang, so I have to Volt Switch out as he Shift Gears up. I go into Jellicent to get off a Water Gem boosted Surf, and then have to recover up after taking 2 Thunderbolts. I Surf again, then have to heal up as Colress does the same with a Hyper Potion. We take another Thunderbolt and get off a Surf. I try to recover up on a predicted T-Bolt, but Kling Klang actually Shift Gears up. It Shift Gears again as we Surf, and then throws off a big T-Bolt and gets Curse Bodied. This is actually pretty bad for us, because +3 Gear Grind actually does more, bringing me down incredibly low, but thankfully we can take it out with 1 more Surf. Out comes Behem, so we pivot into Jom, and throw off a Water Gem boosted Aqua Tail as it Calm Minds again, allowing us to return the following turn to knock it out. Next comes out Magnezone, and this is bad. I have absolutely 0 for this Pokemon, and it has its Sturdy intact, so I can't even OHKO it. I decide to pivot Golbat and sack it off to break its Sturdy, but Magnezone actually goes for Thunder Wave. This is fine as long as I don't get Damn it. A second Discharge KOs our Golbat. I go into Heracross and bring the Mag down to Sturdy as it Thunder Waves me. I then get full paired again as I take a Flash Cannon, but I should live a Explosion. I didn't even think of the move, and I just lost probably the biggest carry of this run. Last up is Magnetin, which we hit with an Aqua Tail as it Thunder Waves us. We live any non-crit... Oh, come on! No more Azu. Probopass is able to avoid a crit and knocks that out with Earth Power. We win the battle, but at what cost? Next up is Kyurem Black into Ghetsis, and our team is absolutely devastated. We just lost 3 members, and 2 of which were probably our best members. I go grind up some new team members and grab some very much needed TMs to take on Ghetsis and Kyurem. My plan for both is essentially Toxic plus Protect. I know that's not the most fun thing to watch, but hey, with our new team, you gotta do what you gotta do. Kyurem Black is first, so I lead off with Probopass to get a big Toxic off. The turn after, I Power Gem for a chunk and chew a Fusion Bolt, and then proceed to Protect the following turn. Unfortunately, it decides to charge up a Free Shock on this turn, so I'm forced to switch out on this absolute nuke. I go Vaporeon as I should probably live any hit, but of course we get crit and die in 1 move to a resisted hit. God, this Pokemon is strong. We win this fight, but we have to fight Ghetsis with only 5 Pokemon. Ghetsis leads off with Cofagrigus, which Probopass can pretty easily stall down with Toxic and Protects. Unfortunately, it gets an immediate Spadef drop, so we have to do some pivoting and take unneeded chip on our Walrein, but hey, what can you do? Some more Toxic and Protecting and we take out the Cofagrigus. Next up is Seismitoad, and Earthquake into Sludge Wave just misses out on the KO on our Tangrowth as we KO it with Giga Drain. Next up he sends out Electros and we go back into Probopass and start to stall the Electros down. 1 turn before it goes down to Poison, I actually pivot Tangrowth to keep Probopass as healthy as possible, avoiding a final Thunderbolt. Next up is Drapion, so I switch into Golduck to take a hit and get a Scald off, but of course he gets raw OHKO'd. He's not a Psychic type, guys. He just died to that Night Slash. It wasn't a crit either. He just died. Gosh, Golduck is really bad. I really needed that chip, so I'm basically forced into another sack because of this. Walrein does 2-hit KO with Ice Gem boosted Ice Beam into a regular one, but it's essentially dead at this point as well. Out comes Toxicroak, and oh my lord, how do I beat this thing? I go Jellicent on a Poison Jab and then recover up on a Shadow Ball. I start throwing out my own Shadow Balls, but then I have to start recovering to stay healthy in between Shadow Ball turns. Eventually, I get Spadef dropped, which forces me out into sacking Tangrowth. I then go back into Jellicent and kill it with a Shadow Ball. Next up comes Life Orb Hydra, forcing me to sack my Walrein. I then go Probopass and get a Toxic off, and after Toxic plus Life Orb chip, this thing is getting really chipped down, and allows Probopass to 1v1 the Hydreigon with that in conjunction with Protect. We beat Ghetsis, but now we only have 2 Pokemon in our party and 1 in the box, and the 1 in the box is Basculin. Thankfully, we get exactly 3 more encounters before the Elite Four. I catch a Metang with my Master Ball because I'm going to need Metagross for this end run. I then catch Sawk on Route 23 and Golurk on Victory Road, and that's basically our team for the Elite Four. Probopass, Metagross, Jellicent, Sawk, and freaking Basculin. First up, we take on Grimsley. I lead off with my newly acquired Sawk and click Protect to avoid Fake Out from Liepard and don't allow it to pop its normal gem. Next up, I click Bulk Up after taking an Aerial Ace. I then Protect during a turn of Lefty's back. Liepard then goes for an Attract as I try Bulk Up again, but can't move due to Attract. I need the second Bulk Up off so that I can OHKO the Crocodile after an Intimidate. The next turn I break through and bulk up again after taking an Aerial Ace. I get immobilized by Love one more time before taking out the Liepard with a +2 Brick Break. Next up comes in Bisharp, and after a Protect to gain leftovers, I knock it out with a Brick Break. Out next is Crook, and after yet another Protect, I barely live an EQ on 25 HP and knock it out with a Brick Break. I cannot express enough how valuable a move like Protect is in a Nuzlocke like this for residual recovery and scouting, or even toxic stalling like we've been doing with Probopass. If you haven't been using Protect in your Nuzlockes, I definitely explore doing that more. Last up is Scrafty, and to not risk anything like a crit or not OHKOing with Brick Break, I go into Metagross and take it out with a few Meteor Mashes. I take on Caitlyn next and lead off with Golurk. A Ghost Gem boosted Shadow Punch OHKOs the Musharna. Next up comes Sigoleth, so I pivot into Probopass on a predicted Ice Beam. A critical hit Power Gem then OHKOs the Sigoleth from full. Out comes the Reuniclus, so I pivot Metagross on a predicted Focus Blast. In hindsight, I probably should have gone Golurk to not take unneeded chip on my Metagross, because even though this is a neutral hit, it does an absolute ton of damage. I protect for some leftovers, then go for a big Meteor Mash. I protect once again, then hit one last Meteor Mash to pick off the Reuniclus and get an attack boost. Last up is Gothitelle, which I also 2-hit KO with Meteor Mash into an Ice Punch and finish up the battle versus Caitlyn. Next, I decide to take on Marshall. He leads throw against my Metagross, and I throw off a big Psychic and take negligible damage from Bulldoze, and also don't get the speed drop due to our ability's Clear Body. After a Protect to gain some more leftovers, I take it out with another Psychic. Next comes out Mienshao. I Protect on the first high jump kick, forcing it to crash and miss and take half of its HP. I then go hard into Golurk as it takes itself out to recoil, crashing right through us and our ghost typing. Next up is Sock, so I pivot out on a predicted Payback into Metagross. After a few Psychics, I decide to pivot out into Jellicent on a predicted Brick Break. I can then click Recover on a Payback as my Rocky Helmet takes out the Sock. I did this to guarantee to have a full health Jellicent on the incoming Conkeldurr, which is a big threat. Once the Conkeldurr comes in, I throw a Toxic on it to put it on a timer. But don't worry, this Conk is Sheer Force and not Guts. After the bulk up, I switched out to Golurk to dodge a Stone Edge. The next time I Earthquake and take an ungodly amount from a resisted Stone Edge. But thankfully our Citrus Berry puts us out of range of the next one. After a few Earthquakes and crit dodges, I take out the Conk, defeating Marshall. Lastly, we have to take on Chantal, probably my worst matchup outside of the champion in the Elite Four. Versus Chantal, I lead off with Golurk and throw off another big Ghost Gem boosted Shadow Punch. It just barely misses out on a KO from the Kofagrigus, but we just barely chew the Shadow Ball. I'm okay with taking this hit, as Golurk is pretty slow and OHKO'd by pretty much everything else in this fight anyways. After wasting a full restore, we 2-hit KO with Shadow Punch. Next comes in Drifblim, so I switch in Probopass to chew Shadow Ball. I Power Gem after taking a T-Bolt, and then after a Protect, I KO it with another Power Gem. Next comes out Golurk, and I have absolutely zero for this Pokemon. And it's time for Basculin's one use this entire run. I have to switch in and avoid a crit from Golurk, which thankfully we do. A Water Gem boosted Waterfall knocks out the Golurk and stops it from raw sweeping us. Next in comes her Ace Chandeleur. I also kinda lose to this Pokemon, so it's time to sack off Basculin as Waterfall does not OHKO. We don't get the flinch, but we get off needed chip for our Kasib Berry Jellicent to kill off the Chandeleur. RIP little buddy, we won't let your death be for nothing. Alright ladies and gents, champion time. In champion fights, you're essentially supposed to know when to sack off things, since this is the last fight to gain offensive momentum. And that's exactly what I plan to do. I lead off with Sock versus Hydreigon as we have Sturdy and can do big damage with Brick Break, surviving any hit. Unfortunately, we got rid of Close Combat pre-Elite 4, which would have OHKO'd this to make room for Brick Break. After wasting a full restore, we let Sock go down to a Dragon Pulse. We then send out Chad the Probopass to revenge, but pop our air balloon in the process after taking a Surf, which we had for the Haxorus. In hindsight, we probably should have just gone leftovers on this, because I knew I would need to take a hit from this Hydreigon, but oh well. Next up comes out Druddigon, so I pivot Golurk on the Focus Blast, then 2-hit KO with Earthquake after taking a Flamethrower. Out comes Lapras, and man oh man, is this thing an issue. Unfortunately, we aren't Water Absorb on our Jellicent, so we can't really PP stall and pivot around this thing. Regardless, I go Jelly and get off a big Toxic before Iris lands a Sing and sleeps us. Who hits? We stay asleep for 2 turns, but thankfully wake up and get a big recover off, but then get parried. However, Pringle refuses to go down, lives a T-Bolt on 7 HP, and gets another recover off. One more recover after that, and we're able to KO the Lapras to poison damage. Out comes the Aggron, which unfortunately finishes me down after getting an Autotomize off with Rock Slide. Ludwig 7 for Jelly. Next up we have Golurk, which straight up nukes Aggron with an Earthquake. Out next is our Ace Haxorus. I decided to go for Earthquake to not let it set up for free, but the Haxorus actually elects to go for Earthquake itself, which does not OHKO us from the range we're at. After getting that Earthquake damage off, Golurk goes down to an X-Scissor. Next, I go into my Sugar Berry Metagross, chew an EQ, and get a big Ice Punch off, but it just barely misses out on the KO. But then, freeze. Finally, some good RNG. Praise be to RNGesus. We KO the Haxorus the next turn to another Ice Punch, and lastly comes out Archeops, which has zero way of hitting Metagross. We Ice Punch it into Defeatist range, and then I decide to switch into Probopass. After the hard carry he's given us all game since we caught him back in Chargestone Cave, he deserves the final blow. One more Power Gem, and boom, we're the champion. Overall, this run was a lot of fun, though I definitely played it incredibly sloppy towards the end due to my early game success and getting a little bit of a big head. Even in the Elite Four, I have no idea why I didn't teach my Golurk Ice Punch. Thankfully, we were able to get it done though. Next run, I'll definitely try and be more careful for sure. Thank you guys so much for watching, and let me know what you guys think. Like I said, I have a Radical Red Hardcore Nuzlocke video in the making, so definitely sub for that, and let me know what kind of run you'd like to see me do next. See you guys next time.